You've probably noticed it. The people who talk the loudest say the least. The ones with the least substance, somehow always at the center of attention. Meanwhile, the people who think deeply, who question everything, who see through the noise, keep getting pushed to the sidelines. And maybe that's you. You try to be thoughtful. You try to be fair. But somehow, you keep getting overrun by people who aren't nearly as intelligent or as careful as you. So you start wondering, is the system rigged against you? Or are you playing the wrong game? Because history shows something strange, repeatedly. When power shifts, when institutions rise and fall, it's rarely the most intelligent who take charge. It's the opportunists, the loud, the manipulative, the ones who understand something most smart people ignore. The game isn't about being right. It's about being effective. And that difference ruins lives. Let's go back. In 1943, Dietrich Bonhoeffer sat in a Nazi prison, watching how a nation of thinkers, artists, and philosophers had fallen into total obedience. His conclusion? The real threat to civilization isn't malice, it's stupidity. But not stupidity in the way you think. Bonhoeffer said stupidity is not a lack of intelligence. It's a lack of independence, a refusal to think for yourself. And in a system built on propaganda, obedience, and performance, that kind of stupidity thrives. It becomes functional, even rewarded. So where does that leave the intelligent? They become threats, outsiders, pariahs, because intelligence asks questions, and the people in power rarely like questions. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming too. He warned that in herd societies, people are punished not for being wrong, but for being different. When survival depends on belonging, conformity becomes currency, and independent thought becomes dangerous. So what happens? The smartest people adapt by retreating. They stop arguing, they stay quiet, they observe. They learn that speaking up just gets them labeled difficult, that challenging the narrative only isolates them further. So they fold inwards, they read, they think, they overanalyze. And the fools, they climb. Because in systems built on social status, appearance matters more than substance. In politics, in business, in social media, it's not the person with the best idea who wins. It's the one who knows how to sell it. Smart people want to be accurate. Fools want to be convincing. And that single difference is everything. Look at the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's not just some quirky psychology finding. It explains entire political movements. People with the least competence tend to overestimate themselves. Meanwhile, those who are genuinely skilled are more likely to doubt themselves, to question their abilities, to see the complexity. So who looks more confident in public? Who sounds more certain on stage? Who ends up with more followers? Not the person who knows more, but the one who thinks they know enough to say it like it's gospel. Confidence sells, certainty sells, and uncertainty, no matter how intelligent, gets ignored. Socrates, maybe the most iconic philosopher of all time, said, "I know that I know nothing." That sentence got him killed, literally. He questioned the powerful. He asked uncomfortable things. And in the end, the state labeled him a threat and forced him to drink poison. Meanwhile, his accusers, the manipulators, the self-righteous, the performative elites, walked away untouched. Because that's the pattern. Throughout history, thinkers have often been punished, while frauds have been rewarded. Galileo was imprisoned for challenging the church. Nikola Tesla died broke, while conmen like Edison turned ideas into empires. In the modern age, brilliant engineers write code in basements, while average salespeople sell their work for millions. This isn't new, it's structural. And it creates a deep psychological problem for smart people. Because if you grow up rewarded for intelligence, getting praised for good grades, for being right, for seeing what others miss, then enter a world where those traits don't matter anymore, it can break you. You start to internalize the failure. You think, maybe I'm just not good enough. But it's not that. It's that the game changed, and you didn't notice. Manipulators don't win because they're smart. They win because they understand incentives. They understand attention. And attention is the new currency. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." In a world where perception shapes power, morality becomes optional. Effectiveness is everything. That's why fools rise. Not despite their foolishness, but because they know how to package it as confidence. Meanwhile, the intelligent hesitate. They double-check their facts. They wonder if they're missing something. And by the time they're ready to speak, the conversation has already moved on. The world doesn't pause for nuance. It rewards whoever gets there first, with the boldest claim, the simplest answer, the strongest emotional pull. It's not about who's right. It's about who wins the moment. And that's the painful truth smart people have to confront. Being right is not enough. But here's where it gets even worse. When intelligent people do try to play the game, when they step into the arena of influence, they often feel fake. They worry about becoming the very thing they despise. They see the manipulation, the shortcuts, the oversimplification, and they hesitate. They think, if I have to dumb this down to be heard, maybe it's not worth saying. So they stay quiet, again. Meanwhile, the world gets louder, filled with noise, filled with certainty, filled with leaders who mistake charisma for competence. And here's the cycle. The more the intelligent withdraw, the more space they leave for opportunists. And the more those opportunists take control, the more rigged the system becomes against nuance, reflection, or truth. This is what philosopher José Ortega y Gasset warned about in The Revolt of the Masses. He described a future where expertise would be drowned out by mediocrity posing as confidence, where average minds, empowered by technology and echo chambers, would override the insights of those who had spent years thinking deeply. We are now living in that future. But it's not just the external system that works against intelligence. There's something internal too, something deeper. Because the smarter you are, the more aware you become of complexity. And the more complexity you see, the harder it becomes to act. Fools rush in. They see a binary, a simple answer, a button to press. The intelligent? They see 5 layers of nuance. They see unintended consequences. They see the historical precedent. They see the ethical gray areas. And in the time it takes them to process all that, the decision's already been made by someone far less qualified. So intelligence, without decisiveness, becomes a kind of paralysis, a prison of possibilities. And that's what makes it so dangerous, not to others, but to itself. Because the intelligent often think their insight alone will protect them, that being right will be enough, that truth speaks for itself. But truth has no microphone, and it rarely shouts. That's why Plato, in the Republic, said that philosophers should rule, not because they want to, but because they're the only ones who don't. The ones who crave power are usually the least fit to wield it. But in every era, they're the ones who end up with it, because they pursue it, relentlessly, loudly, shamelessly. So what's the solution? It's not to become manipulative. It's not to throw away truth or abandon depth. It's to realize that truth, intelligence, and insight must be communicated effectively, or they die in silence. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said that truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Then, it is violently opposed. Then, it is accepted as self-evident. But here's what he didn't say. Sometimes it dies in stage 2 because no one fought for it loud enough. And that's the challenge. Because if you're watching this, chances are you've felt it. You've seen people rise who shouldn't. You've seen the lazy get promoted, the fake get praised. The loudest voice wins the argument, while you sat there, biting your tongue, trying to make sense of the absurdity. But the world doesn't always reward accuracy. It rewards clarity. And clarity isn't about dumbing things down. It's about delivering truth in a way that can actually be heard. That's what the most effective thinkers in history figured out. Nietzsche didn't just write for academics. He wrote in aphorisms, short, punchy, provocative lines that stuck in people's minds. Socrates didn't publish books. He asked questions. He made people feel their ignorance instead of telling them they were wrong. Even Marcus Aurelius, writing his Stoic Meditations, didn't aim for flowery language. He wrote to himself to ground his thoughts into something actionable. They weren't playing the game of sounding smart. They were trying to reach something deeper. And that's what smart people often forget. Intelligence isn't about knowing more. It's about bridging more, building the path between insight and action, between truth and trust, between complexity and clarity. So if you feel like you're losing to fools, it might not be because they're winning. It might be because you've been waiting for the system to reward you, waiting for people to notice, waiting for truth to speak for itself. But it won't. Not unless you give it a voice. Not unless you speak clearly, boldly, even if it's uncomfortable. Not with arrogance, not with noise, but with presence. Because the world needs intelligence that doesn't hide, that doesn't shrink, that doesn't retreat into silence or cynicism. It needs intelligence that shows up, even when the system rewards the opposite. And maybe the real test of intelligence isn't knowing more. It's knowing when to stop watching fools win and start changing the game.